Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. Today I'm doing my June wrap-up to talk about the books that I read and didn't read in June. So this was my stack from my TBR jar picks, and I did not read all of these. I had Escape by Carolyn Jessup. I have not started this. I also had While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams. Did not get to this. The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, which I was going to read for the Read Historical Fiction 2024? Historical Fiction Readathon by Shelly-ish. I did not get to this either. I did try to listen to it on audiobook because I had finished my other audiobook. So I figured I would give this a shot, but I didn't like the audio narration, or there was nothing wrong with it. It was just like there were certain words that were in Norwegian, like the words for mom and dad, basically. And they said the Norwegian word, but with a British accent, and it was just very weird to me, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And then I realized, oh, it's Norwegian, which is almost like Swedish, and so, I don't know, it was just very confusing to me, and I didn't want to keep listening and be confused by such a simple thing. So I decided to not continue listening to that, but I want to read this still, and all of these 3 books, I just didn't get to them this month, and that's fine. So the first book that I did finish in June was Marina by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is a YA horror story that I'm reading as a buddy read with Mariandrea from Books and Bocadillos. So this is set in Barcelona in Spain in the 1980s, and we follow a boy named Oscar who is at a boarding school, and he likes to wander about after school. And one day he comes across this cat, and he's kind of lured into a house, and it's a bit creepy. And then he meets this girl called Marina, and they go exploring together. And among other things, they see this woman who is at an abandoned grave, or no, not abandoned, but it's a gravestone without a name on it. And she comes there every Sunday, or like one Sunday a month or something like that, and it's very mysterious, and they want to figure out more about that. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about the story itself. So like I said, this is a YA horror book, and it's really creepy. I had started it a few years back but didn't finish it then, so I knew that it was a bit creepy, but it was a lot more creepy than I had remembered. And I get scared very easily, so this was like just about what I could handle in terms of horror. But yeah, it's really good, and I love this author's writing. This is the author who wrote The Shadow of the Wind, and I just love his writing. It does have the same sort of structure, or like there are stories within the story in this one, just as it is in Shadow of the Wind. And yeah, I just like that style of storytelling. Yeah, there are the scary parts in that whole story and the stories within the stories. And then there's also like the friendships and like young love and family love. And there's a lot of depth to this story as well. I also like that it's not set that much in the school where Oscar goes. That's just kind of where he goes home to, but we're not like spending a lot of time there. And like it's a pretty short book, and so there's not a lot of like fluff around it. It's pretty straight to the point, and just, well, not maybe straight to the point with all these like side stories, or like stories, the story within the story, which is the story. Like it's hard to explain, but yeah, there's no like irrelevant things. There are no parts in the book where you're like, okay, but let's get on with the story. It's just very action-packed, and there's no like time spent wondering and things like that. It's just, we should go there, and then they go there. kind of thing. So yeah, I really like that about this story. The only thing I don't like is the cover on this particular book, because you get the feeling that Marina is a little girl from this picture. Like, does that not look like a little girl who's like 10 or something? I think that she's like 17 or something like that, because it says that Oscar is 15 and Marina is a couple of years older than him. And there are parts in the book where they're walking in town and like men turn and look at her, and like Oscar is also looking at her and like seeing her hips through her dress and things like that. And like, that's not that's not appropriate for a girl that age at all. And so I don't know what they were thinking when they did this cover. It's not about children at all. They're teenagers, like older teenagers. So that's the only thing I don't like about this book. Everything else I like. In terms of rating, it's somewhere between a 4 and a 5. I think it's a 5 in terms of more objectively rating it. I think it's a fantastic YA horror novel. It's beautifully written, it's beautifully told, and it's really creepy, and it's giving everything that you want it to give for a YA horror novel. For me, it's like a 4-star rating, just in terms of how much I enjoy it, or like how much it's not my favorite book ever. I really like it. But it's not a 5-star read for me, I don't think. Maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, I love this little book, but it's not my favorite book ever. I don't know. Either way, it's a high rating. It's a great little book. And if I can handle it, I'm sure other people who are scared can handle it. It is creepy, but not too creepy. And it's very well written, so highly recommend. So the next 3 books are for our book club, and I talk about them a lot more in depth in the book club video. If you have read any of these books, I would, you're very welcome to watch the book club video and we can chat about them there. The first one I read from those was The Wager by David Grann, which is a non-fiction about a British ship that sails toward South America on a secret war mission in the 1740s, with a fleet of several ships. And we follow the different sailors and captains and crew on that ship through their logbooks and like historical records. And it's a great adventure, a great story. I really enjoyed it. There are a lot of things happening in the book. Like it says on the cover, there's shipwreck and mutiny and murder. And there's also like storms during the journey and sickness and injuries and all those kinds of things. And also like the camaraderie and the relationships between the men on this ship. And there are also themes of colonialism and racism and slavery, and indigenous peoples that they come across. And yeah, so there are a lot of different elements to the story, and it's also very action-packed and interesting and full of little facts without being too dry. So yeah, I thought it was a great nonfiction book that didn't read like a nonfiction book. I listened to this on audiobook and I thought the narration was great. The language is a bit more advanced than in a fictional story, as it should. So I listened to it at like 90% speed, just like a little bit slowed down, because the level of English was a bit more advanced for me. So I just slowed it down a little bit and then it was fine. And I think it's a book that works very well as an audiobook. I don't think I would have been as engaged reading it as a physical book. I really enjoyed having it told to me. It felt more like a documentary podcast kind of thing, rather than reading a textbook or like a nonfiction book. I don't know, I haven't tried it, so that's just my impression. I really enjoyed the parts where they had shipwrecked and were on this island, and how they sort of handled law and order among themselves, and like how the different factions sort of they split into different groups and things, and that was really interesting. It's like a psychological experiment. I find that part of the story very interesting. And then it slowed down a little bit at the end of the book for me, when there was just like, after the journey was over and it was just like tying up loose ends and sort of telling us about how everything resolved. I don't think it was wrong to keep that in there. Like, that definitely should be in there as it is a non-fiction book and you want to know what happened. It just wasn't as like interesting and fast-paced and engaging as the journey itself. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. It's somewhere around a 4 or 5 star as well. It's not like my favorite book ever, but it was really good and really well written and a really interesting story. Yeah. The next book I read was definitely a new favorite of mine, and that was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I loved everything about this book, and I would highly recommend anyone to read it. I don't want to say too much about it because I would recommend going into it as blind as possible, as I know a lot of people say, and I did, and I'm really happy that I did. I don't want to say much else because I really don't want to spoil it. I loved it. It just scratched all of my itches in my brain. It was everything I wanted in a book. It's really short and really great. It was very confusing and it made me think a lot, and I can't wait for my boyfriend to read this so that we can talk about it. It's an easy 5 stars and I love it. This was also a book club pick, so I talk about this a lot more in detail with spoilers. So if you have read this book and you want to discuss it, you can head over there and we can talk about it more over there. But if you haven't read it, don't watch that. Okay? The next book I read was As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh, and this was also a book club read, so I talk about this in more detail in that book club video as well. This is another YA novel set in Syria during the revolution there, and we follow Salama, who is 19, who has lost a lot of her family. Either they have been killed or imprisoned, and so the only one she has left is her best friend and sister-in-law, Layla, and she works at a hospital where she has sort of taken on the role of being a doctor or a surgeon, even though she is only a student to become a pharmacist, but that's kind of like the most medical knowledge anybody has. And she is grappling with the decision of whether to stay and help people or if she should leave and go to Germany as a refugee. And then she meets Kenan, who is a year older than her, and they start to get to know each other and start to fall for each other, and so then that has to also be taken into account in her decision. She also sees this Katouh character who is very dark and creepy and appears to her like a hallucination, and he is also trying to push her to make a decision. I thought this was a really good book as well. I had a great reading month in terms of quality. It is a young adult novel, so it did read a little bit young at certain points, but not in a way that was like too childish or like too juvenile. It just read youthful. I liked the romance part of it. I think it gives a very clear image of what it's like to be in a war zone with all of the like fears, but also the wants and the dreams and the hopes, and how you relate to other people and how you are affected by that situation and what kind of decisions you make, like how you act morally as a person in that environment. And yeah, it's beautifully written and it's a really good story. There are a lot of descriptions of physical feelings, so it's very immersive in that way. Like you can imagine what it feels like physically to be in that environment, and it's also emotional. There were definitely parts in this where I teared up or cried because It was very emotional. Also somewhere between 4 or 5 stars. I'm not really sure yet, but it was really great, and yeah, I would recommend. As for these, I really want to get to them at some point, but this was just not the month that I could read them in. And so they're going back on the shelf, and I will pick them for another month. The book I'm currently reading is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. And this is also going to be a book club read, along with 1984 by George Orwell and A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman. Those are the 3 picks for July. So if you want to join us in reading those, you are very welcome to do so. And the books that were chosen for August were Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, and The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And yeah, really looking forward to those. And if you haven't read them yet, but you want to, you can join us in August. So those were all the books I read in June. I wish I could have read a couple of more of the ones that I had chosen, but I just didn't get to them this month, and that's completely fine. In terms of quality, I had a fantastic reading month, so I'm still happy. And I hope you had a really great reading month in June as well, and that you're having an even better one in July. Please let me know what you're reading at the moment in the comments. I would love to know. And if you have any good recommendations for me, I would love that. And yeah, I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.